yeah, we don't need Nina anymore. For some reason, I still have her. Oh, wait, yeah, we do. Because she's the only one who can make Mina come along.
Okay, so what you're saying is we got the airship.
Yep.
But you need a special character in your party to use the airship.
That is correct. Which doesn't matter all that much, because, like, any place that you are required to get to, more or less, like, you can change characters. Like, right here, I'm going to this little town first before I go to the main destination, because there's a dragon god there.
Ooh.
And you can change party members.
Okay.
So it's not that big a deal. You aren't going to go through any dungeons that require Nina to get to.
Okay. That still seems odd.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean,
but it makes sense from a Breath of Fire 1 perspective. I think it's a holdover from that.
And it makes sense from some perspective.
It also makes sense from a gameplay perspective, because you have to press Y to do it, and that's your special action.
Oh, okay.
And so, like, yeah, you're not going to call the Great Bird with Rand, because otherwise you're going to turn into that ball and roll across the countryside.
Okay. And there are still locations where you need someone skilled to get to, even with the bird.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. That makes sense. That's annoying, but that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, actually, now that I think about it, you might not have to. Because the only one really you'd need to... Well, okay, there's like one location.
Isn't there forests?
There are forests, yeah, but you can usually land in an outcropping or something.
Okay.
If you want to go visit the trees. I guess if you want to visit the great trees, you'd need Spar, but like that's such a nothing anything because the forests are so small. But the one we went into the things mined for, like that's not a big deal.
Okay. So essentially, they're tying it to a mechanic that's already there for easy programming, but at this point you don't need anything anymore.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, so now I'm going around talking to a whole bunch of things that I couldn't talk to before. This is where you can get the second best equipment in the game.
Man, expensive shit too.
Yeah, I mean, it's the second best equipment in the game, so it makes sense. Yeah, so, like, we got Brave Armor, Mother Robe, Sun Mask, all that stuff. Like, some of these things actually show up in later Breath of Fires as high-tier equipment, like the Sun Mask in particular.
Do they have secondary effects?
Sometimes.
Oh, neat.
I think the Holy Shield might, like, allow you to cast Kyrie or something, which is, like, an instant death against all undead on the screen sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I dig equipment that gives you extra added abilities.
Yeah.
And lets people go off type.
Yeah, you have to use it from the item screen if you're going to get those extra abilities. And of course, there are also added effects like protection against fire and stuff like that. But because the elemental system in this is so busted, most of the time that doesn't even matter.
Okay.
Unless they're directly casting, I think it's Spark, Flame, and Fireball.
I'm guessing there's some kind of weird encounter here.
Yeah, if you, Okay, so the encounters here aren't really anything, but this is where you can fish up the best equipment in the game.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, the best sword in the game, not the best equipment, I guess.
Right.
It's the Empire Sword, and I might actually be wrong about the specific location. It might be a little bit further down, but either way, like, you can only get there using Mina.
Okay, so you can only get there using Mina. It's not always there.
Yeah.
Is there any clue in game it's there?
If it's at the spot where I am right now, the clue is that you can see it when you're going to Township, because Township is like just 3 or 4 spaces left. Like you could, if I moved 3 or 4 spaces to the left, using the bird, like you could see Township right there.
Okay.
So this is pretty much where you're gonna, like your main base, Township, is...
Right.
Yeah, you're gonna see it. If it's a little bit lower, you'll probably see it if you're flying by, because it's not an infrequent encounter.
So there's no, hey, here's this legendary sword, it sunk off of a ship around this area.
No. There's nothing like that. You just kind of have to see this weird fishing spot, and you're like, oh, interesting. Oh, yeah, it's right there. Okay. So I can't get it right now because I don't have a proper pull. But I'm doing this just for shits and giggles because I have like a shit ton of gold, which is what's required to get treasure chests. Gold as a lure. So yeah, fishing is kind of stupid in this game. Oh, I do have the charm rod. When the fuck did I get that? I guess I must have gotten it off screen.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I got the treasure box, and here's the Empire Sword. So now Ryu has the strongest attack power in the game, and will continue to have that for until Kat gets her shamanized form. But yeah, went up from 222 to 300.
That's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
On about every possible level.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably why it's so missable.
It's in a random fishing spot. It's not visually distinct from any other fishing spot.
Yeah. Now, to be fair...
being fair.
In Breath of Fire 1, you get really good equipment using fishing as well. And you get it automatically. But either way, like, if you've played Breath of Fire 1, you'll know that fishing can yield the best equipment in the game.
Does anything tell you in Breath of Fire 1?
Yes. They say you can fish up dragon equipment, which is very nice. Okay.
That slightly makes it better if you're coming from 1 to 2.
Yeah, it's not the best. And then there's the cat that says, "What?"
That's ridiculous. That's absurd.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is, this was made in an era where you didn't have the internet and wikis to go to.
Correct. So that's one of those situations where they expected people to be like, "Dude, guess what I found?" And they'll tell their friends this stuff, and of course it got mixed in with the whole my uncle works at Nintendo thing, but like, sometimes you get stuff like that, and it's fucking cool.
Yeah, I guess, but that's...
I know.
That's kind of extreme.
From the way we judge game design these days, it's not good game design. But back in the day when this is like one of the few games you had, it was fine.
Yeah, I suppose you're right, because back in the day, you didn't get that many games.
Yeah, like back in the day, you had the original Legend of Zelda where you were expected to bomb just about every wall if you wanted all of the optional shit, like the heart containers and whatnot.
Well, not even going into that, just the idea that as a player, you wouldn't physically own many games. So the games you had, you would play a lot of.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I remember back in the day, a game's quality was measured by how many hours of entertainment you could get out of it.
Yeah.
And I still have friends to this day who still measure their games that way.
A good number of people do that, and I think that's why games are so frickin' long these days. Like, even things that necessarily shouldn't be.
See, I was in the exact opposite camp, because there's a ton of games out there that are like, yeah, this is a 2-hour game, and they are proud of the fact that they're 2 hours long.
Mm-hmm. I suppose, yeah. Like, Portal was like that.
Portal's like that. There's a lot of QuickTime event games, like A Way Out that just came out is only like an 8-hour game.
Yeah, that's true.
And back in the day, you release an 8-hour game and it's like, it better be hard as fuck and require like 50 hours of mastering.
Right.
To get that done.
Yeah, and I think that mindset did come from this era when you only had one game and you wanted to get your money's worth out of it.
Because games are also way more expensive back in the day.
Yeah.
Like, I remember a new Genesis cartridge was between $60 and $80 in the 90s.
Yeah, I bought Mario Kart for $80 and thought that was crazy. Because most things were typically $60 to $70.
That's
even
not,
then.
And that was 20 years ago now.
Yeah, so not even adjusting for inflation.
Absolutely bonkers.
Yep.
But you had your game and you played it.
Yeah.
And nowadays, like, you can go on to Good Old Game or Humble Bundle or a used game store or even a thrift store.
Yep. And
pick up 10 games for the same price.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, like, I think kind of the situation... It's kind of like Dark Souls in a way. Like, I know everybody compares everything to Dark Souls, but you were talking during our Dark Souls playthrough about all of these esoteric things that people just kind of share on the internet. the sharing pool is larger now because
Yes.
the internet is a thing, but it was kind of the same situation.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Like, as long as you had friends who played the same game, someone was bound to discover something that someone else hadn't figured out.
Plus, FOMO wasn't as strong. Is that FOMO, fear of missing out?
Fear of missing out, yeah.
It wasn't as strong back in the 90s.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, in our constant interconnected and the ability to see everything, everyone wants to do everything, and
Yeah.
you can't do everything.
Yeah, it's like a personal failing if you don't complete these things. Yep, and then there's chimeras, which are really hard. Although with the Empire Sword, not so much.
Well, you have the power of the Empire! Unlimited power!
If I remember correctly, death does not work against these things. I was just testing it out. But, yeah.
That little qualifier for all of the Breath of Fire 2 experts that are watching us.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, fucking idiot, death doesn't work on chimeras.
You mean chimeras? As it's spelled there.
Chimera.
Chimera. Yeah.
It's fun going back to old JRPGs and seeing how they translate the conjugation, the kana versions of the actual English or Greek words or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it's just ridiculous.
Aruhamel.
Uh-huh.
Japanese does not handle other syllables well.
It is a relatively limited language.
It's a very rigid language.
Yeah.
It does make reading a lot easier up until you hit kanji, and then even they fuck that up.
Mm-hmm. Well, from what I understand, there's a lot of implication necessary. Like, you have to infer a whole bunch of things. Is that correct?
Yeah. The Japanese language, more often than not, you don't have to verbally state the subject of your sentence.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of, like, I don't think they even have pronouns.
They do have pronouns.
Oh, that's right. They have, like, I and you, and that's, like, it.
They have a number of pronouns. It's just what makes it difficult to translate is a lot of the pronouns aren't gender-based, but relation-based.
Okay.
And a lot of times...
That's right.
It's also tied into the honorific you attach to their name.
Uh-huh.
And the really goofy part about gendered pronouns in the Japanese language, because they do actually have those, it's the speaker gendering themselves as opposed to gendering the subject of their speech.
That's right. Yeah.
Because the Japanese language is incredibly gendered. Because you have feminine language, formal feminine language, masculine language, casual masculine language.
Yeah.
And your entire the pronouns you use for yourself, a number of your honorifics, and even in some extreme cases, the conjugation of verbs changes based on which one you're using. Which is why sometimes when you're watching anime or whatever, you get these characters with these really over-the-top accents. It's because they're trying to translate the speech this person is using.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
different regional dialects and whatnot.
I'm looking over at my One Punch Man poster.
Yeah.
Like, Saitama will use very casual language. The Beauty, who's the top of A tier, uses incredibly formal language. And then Metal Bat-kun uses the most casual masculine language.
Yep.
So even if you learn... When most people learn Japanese, they learn what's called Tokyo Japanese. It's the gender-neutral, basic, formal language.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's kind of like, technically speaking, anyone can use this in any situation. There are some situations where you are expected to use more formal stuff, but you don't necessarily have to.
Right.
And there are some situations where you can get away with more casual language, but you don't have to. This is always kind of the safe bet.
Mm-hmm.
And no one in anime uses that.
Right.
Because they all use their natural language. It's so fucking complicated.
Yeah.